I have worked in the industry in Illinois for over 2 years now. I worked for what is now one of the biggest companies in Illinois. In my time there, I worked as the human resources director, and then also did kind of moved into almost like a onboarding and badging specialist, I think it would kind of make sense. It was my official title, but that's pretty much what I did. Through the course of doing that job for about 2 years, I want to say that I hired, or I at least onboarded and badged probably 700 or 800 employees across 7 different states. I think we had 30 dispensaries, 5 different cultivation centers. It was a big company, so there was a lot there. My personal background is I have a degree in education, which is why I've moved into more of an educational space, which is really exciting for me. So what I'm going to be talking about is the training portions of the application that you guys need to have completed. So there are 2 parts of the application that deal directly with training. The first one is Exhibit D. That is going to be about training your employees. Okay. The only things that it says on there, it's kind of brief, but to summarize, it basically says that you need to make sure that your employees understand the rules and regulations and laws that they need to be following. Here we go. They need to have knowledge of security and operational procedures, and they also need to know how to advise the purchasers on the products that are available in your dispensary, and also how to safely consume cannabis. Okay. There's more that your employees need to know, but that's what the rules are saying for the application. The next one is going to be Exhibit E. This is the purchaser education plan. So this is how are you going to make sure that the people that come in, your customers, how are they going to be informed about the whole program and what they're allowed to do with their cannabis use. So education on cannabis legality. You need to make sure that they have information on the health risks of use and abuse of cannabis. They need to know possible side effects, and they need to know things like probation on smoking in public places. Even though it's an adult use market, it does not mean that you can just walk into a restaurant and light up a joint. It doesn't work like that. Okay, so we're going to go over Exhibit D first. All right, so this is the dispensary. We're skipping. There's really 3 parts to this section that I see. The first part, everybody is going to be required to take a dispensary agent training course. Okay, this is something that was done by IDFPR. They actually had applicants come in. We had to write the entire course and submit it to IDFPR. IDFPR is the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. Know that acronym because I'm going to say it 100 times and you guys are going to need to know them.
It's on every single one of the slides from my
IDFPR. If you are doing cultivation centers, you would be working under the Department of Agriculture, but we're really just talking about dispensaries today. So IDFPR had all these applications go in with a full course already created. They chose 26 vendors that are allowed to administer this course to all of your employees. And when I say employees, I mean owners, I mean corporate employees, anybody that has a badge to work in your facility. This is part of the requirement, okay? So the course that you have to, take, everybody has to take it within 90 days of hire, okay? So they start on January 1st. You've got 3 months to make sure that this course has been completed. And you have to have a course completion certificate on file in your dispensary at all times. I am willing to bet you that this is one of these things that inspectors are going to come in and say, let me see all of your course certificates. Have them on file. Again, must be administered by a responsible vendor. You can get the list of the responsible vendors on the IDFPR website. It has to be at least 2 hours long. You can do it online. You can do it in person. You can get your whole dispensary, get your whole staff together and sit them down on one day, do it all together, whatever really works best for you in your business. It has to be repeated annually. So if you guys were here and we were doing the course and I gave you all certificates, we would be back here in 1 year doing it again, okay? You don't have to use the same vendor every time. You can do it differently if it didn't work out great for you the first time, but annually you need to make sure that's something that is done for every single one of your employees. If they have a badge, they need to have this in correlation. The course, what it actually is basically an overview of the rules and laws and regulations that Illinois government wants to make sure that all of the dispensary agents know. They want to make sure that they know how to run a dispensary. The second part to this this portion of the application, you're going to want to talk about initial staff training. Okay, and I've broken up staff training into two different parts for you guys. Initial staff training is basically how do you train your new employees? You just hired somebody. How do you make sure that they know everything that they need to know? Okay, this is different than, how do you retrain your employees that have been working for you all year? So you're going to want to create a training program. Write all of this out and make sure that the state knows that when you hire a new person, you're going to be putting them through whatever your plan is to make sure that when they start on their first day, that they already know what they're doing. Okay. Part of this should be a plan to have them do their responsible vendor dispensary agent training. So that's a really easy check mark. And then explain how are you going to train and how are you going to evaluate your new employees, making sure that they have cannabis knowledge, that they understand the rules and the regulation. They have to know security and operational procedures. That is huge. I'm sure Tom can attest to you. That whole big speech, you have to teach all of your employees everything about it as well. And purchaser information, things like, how to sell properly to people. You also need some additional trainings for your agent in charge. I know that word was mentioned before. AIC. So everybody has an agent badge, and then you're going to have an AIC, which is maybe the manager or a supervisor, something like that. And AIC is the only person who is allowed to actually open the dispensary, and they're the person that needs to close it at the end of the day. You also have to have at least one AIC on the premise at all times. So that's an important person. You technically only need one, but it is advisable to have more than one. Did you have a question? Yeah, it's yours and it's good for a year. Mm-hmm.
Who pays for the training?
I'm sorry?
Who pays for the training?
That's kind of up to you in the dispensary. Oh, I'm sorry. Who pays for the training if you're doing the responsible vendor training? It depends on if you have a job already or not and if they're going to offer that to you. If you already work for a place, more likely than not that they should be paying for that training for you. There is a charge for it. Mm-hmm. If you decide to do it on your own beforehand, you'll probably pay for that yourself. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. No, that's. Yeah. Technically, they don't have to live in the state. Yeah.
What was the question?
He was asking if you hire an employee, do they have to have a 5-year history of living in Illinois? That's just for ownership, for putting in the application to get your license. This when you're hiring employees, the rules are slightly different. Yeah. Ongoing education. This is training that is required of all of your employees every single year. Okay, so when you have a new hire that comes in, you are going to throw so much training at them, you're going to make their heads spin. That's pretty much going to cover them for year one. You have to continue to retrain. And the state does mandate exactly how much training. They say you have to have a minimum of 8 hours per year. Every single employee has to have that. Okay. There's a couple ways that you can do that. You can host a one-day training where you close your dispensary and the entire staff is there for 8 hours and they have 8 hours of training. Or you can space it out. Maybe every month you host a 1-hour training session so everybody gets in their time so you're not doing crunch at the end of the year. This is something that inspectors will ask you for. You have to have it documented, who was there, how much time they have, everything, what information was given. You have to have that on hand because you will be asked for it. Yeah, if you have an online training, that's fine. The ongoing education is something that the managers or owners need to either do it themselves or bring somebody else to do for them. It's not the responsible vendor program that's like set through the state. This is something different. So if you find that your employees are really kind of struggling with the inventory process, Do an inventory training. Put them all down in chairs and say, listen, we're going to talk for an hour about the inventory. Here's exactly how you do it. Here's what we're looking for. Go through the whole thing. It's a training.
Yes.
That's a better question for you. Yes.
Starting January 1, it's going to be a requirement in the state of Illinois that every business, regardless of the number of employees, has to conduct sexual harassment compliance training.
Yes. So some of the things that you need to cover with your employees, both for the ongoing and initially, are some of these things listed here. You need to go over the point of sale system. So whether it's the BioTrack HTC or we use one called LeafLogix, whatever system you're using to actually perform the sales transaction, you need to train people on how to do that. And often you need to retrain people how to do it when they get a little lazy and they forget how to do it, right? The state verification system, this is partially is BioTrack. That's it's always documenting what is sold, and the system's actually interesting. If you actually have a product from a dispensary, there's a code on there. Like if you went into this system, you can actually look and see the cannabis that made that product when it was moved from the clone room to the baby veg room 3 months ago. It's, every single product has a track history, so making sure that your employees understand that, then that's how they figure out if there's a problem. They find that there was mold on a certain harvest, but somehow some of that product got out. That's how you're going to get recalls. We had a problem in our facility. You need to take anything that's under this barcode. It needs to be quarantined until we figure it out. I know Joe and Stu were talking about quarantining a little bit. That's kind of how that happens. You need to make sure that everybody understands the requirement of their agent badge. This is I'm going to talk about badges at the end of this because it's a big deal and it's very unique to this industry. I've never run into anything like this before. They need to know how to do proper inventory handling, like I was saying, and tracking. They need to know specific uses of cannabis and infused products. Inspections and law enforcement, they're in there all the time, you guys. It's, they were talking about the cameras. They have 24/7 access. Illinois State Police and IDFPR will go in and look all the time. If they see something, you're going to get a phone call or you're going to get an email. Hey, we saw on the cameras. They are watching. They are definitely watching. But they also come in and do inspections. They don't tell you that they're coming in. They just show up. So, I'm sorry? Oh, yes. Every time I hired anybody, I always told them there should never be a reason that if an inspector came in that you need to scramble, because you are always doing everything to the letter of the law every second you are in that building. Don't mess with it because they will bust you, okay? And then other topics specified by the department. These inspectors, whoops.
Thank you
You're welcome. These inspectors, when they come in, you're doing everything to your knowledge of how you are supposed to do everything. They are going to come in and tell you, and I promise you, they're going to come in and tell you that you're not doing something right. And that's okay. They're going to give you a chance to fix it, okay? They come in and they say, you know what? This thing here I think is blocking the camera too much. You need to move it. The next time they come in, you better have moved it, okay? Whatever they ask you to do, you have to follow along with it, okay? This goes into training because all these inspections that happen throughout the year, you need to sit your employees down and say, listen, this is now how we need to do this because the state said so, okay?
Well, can I make a comment
Yes,
on that?
absolutely.
So there's one thing, like when the regulators are talking to you, and you might be like, oh my God, are you serious? Body language matters.
Yeah.
That eye roll, put sunglasses on. Seriously, like you've got to be extremely eager and earnest and excited to see a regulator with a big smile and say, what can I do for you, mister? That's how it is.
Yeah.
That's
And
how it is.
and there's not a lot of inspectors. You're going to get to know them. So build a nice relationship with them. I think that's really, really helpful. But like I said, they are going to...
Chime in on just one
Yes.
topic.
Yes,
So
please.
The state can view your cameras at any time, but I just also want to be clear, because if I'm a business owner, I want to know what they can and can't do. Okay? They can view your cameras. They cannot turn off your cameras. They can also, they do not have access to review footage all the time. So they cannot just be looking at footage from any time. They have remote live capability but then the on-site inspector is going to validate that you have your 90 days of storage, okay? So they are not going to be doing, unless something changes from other similar industries as states, they are not going to be able to review footage. They can have live access to monitoring, which I think is why you want to have these scheduled quarantine areas on time. It makes they want their job to be easy. If they're not in the business of reviewing footage, okay? They just want they want to check compliance, and that's it. So both on-site and remote, that's what's going to happen. Sorry.
No, it's great. So this slide here I have, it's really important that you guys know that the amount of training that you give your staff is going to directly equal your customer satisfaction, okay? I cannot even tell you how many times I've talked to patients, because I obviously work in the medical field here, how many patients switched dispensaries and they drive twice as far to go somewhere else because the place that's close to them didn't give them good information. They didn't seem to care. They just were like, here's your stuff, bye. That's not how it works, okay? And now you guys don't even have the luxury of having assigned patients to your dispensary. This is now an open market and they can come anywhere. How do they come back to you? You make them want to, because they know that you just gave them so much great information and your employees are so well trained, they trust you, okay? So keep that in mind. It's a big deal. Pause for questions. I think we're okay. Okay. So the Exhibit E is about purchaser education. So the last section was all about how do you train your employees. This is how do you train your customers, okay? Now it sounds silly, like why would I train my customers, but Illinois State says you have to, so that's why you do it. It is really important that when these customers come in, that they are given information that helps them to live their lives in an adult use legal market in Illinois, okay? This is not Colorado, okay? And people are gonna think that I can just buy whatever I want, I can go wherever I want. No, you cannot. You 100% cannot. And it's important that we give them that information so that when they walk out of your dispensary, they're using responsibly, okay? It's very much like being a bartender, okay? I've been a bartender for years, and when I have somebody who drinks too much and they walk out, I'm like, that's actually my problem, okay? Somebody leaves and they get in trouble, it actually comes back to me as the bartender, okay? I can see this going that way as well.
As an individual.
Well, no. Okay. So there are. She's saying, right now, if say you do a sale of cannabis, are you personally liable? Right now, the answer is no. Okay. Now, the one way specifically this has been addressed is in checking IDs. Okay. And this is where, again, I'm seeing a lot of correlation with the food and beverage industry on this. Okay. You are now responsible for checking IDs. In the medical world, medical use, it was so easy because they had an actual patient card. It was done, there's a hologram on it. I mean, that sucker is legit, okay? Now it's different. Now you have to check IDs. And if anybody has ever had to check IDs before, it's not always the easiest thing, okay? When it's an Illinois license, it's pretty easy. You don't have to be an Illinois resident to buy cannabis in Illinois anymore, okay? So if you're going to get Wisconsin IDs, you're going to get Indiana, Iowa's a huge one. Okay. All the markets around us are all fully illegal. They are all going to flood us, and we need to know how to make sure that we are carding them properly. Okay. So you card somebody, and you're like, this looks good. If you scan it, it's a real ID. It could be someone's little brother. You've done everything you possibly can do. You sell that person cannabis, they walk out and they get busted with it. Because you have proof, you are on camera checking an ID, you're looking at their face, you're doing all the things you're supposed to do, you are not liable.
And because it's written in your policies and procedures that
Yes.
you are going to do that, and they can prove that you do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's
Yes.
open.
Yes. That person shouldn't be coming into your dispensary without having been really heavily checked. And I'm a fan of double check them. If you're selling to them and you're like, I don't think this kid is 21, card him again. Card him twice.
Is there a provision within the law that you can actually take either a photocopy or a picture of their license? Is that allowed?
Right now, I think the technical answer is no, because they do say specifically that you're not supposed to keep anybody's information unless they've given you permission to do that. So, I mean, in my mind, if you feel like that's something that you need to do, you have to have their permission, and I would say written permission with their signature in order to do that. But I don't know if you would need to have a copy of their stuff. So, if the next slide is a couple of topics that just suggested topics that you might want to consider having available for your customers. Things like where and when is it okay for them to use cannabis? Like I said, no public spaces. It needs to be in a private home. Driving under the influence, kind of a big deal as well. A lot of people still get in trouble for that. Cannabis is tough because it stays in your system for several days. So make sure that they know that information. Things like symptoms of impairment. What are the medical benefits? Delivery methods and onset is a big one. Delivery methods being, everybody knows you can smoke it. We call that flower. But there's topicals. You can have lotions. You can have tinctures. You can have vape cartridges. You can have edibles of every sort. A lot of people don't know that. And if you know the difference between smoking and taking an edible, it's very, very different. And you don't want people to get uncomfortable and have bad experiences because they don't know how to use the exact products that they have. So, yeah, an appropriate response to overconsumption is a really, really big one too. You can't overdose cannabis. It's not physically possible, but you can overconsume and you can get real uncomfortable, and sometimes that ends up with a hospital visit that you don't need. So making sure that they're aware of some of the methods and things that you can do to calm yourself down would be really helpful. So badging requirements. This is not part of the application, but we felt it was important that you guys had a little bit of an idea of what might be coming your way. This is how this...
Actually, in your operations plan, this would be totally appropriate to put in, and highly recommended, I would say.
Yes.
It's also in the security plan.
Yes. It also is helpful for training, knowing what's kind of coming for this sort of stuff. And again, this is what the rules are right now. I have read the entire law. It's a really fun 600-page read. There is nothing in there about this is changing, but it might. I don't know. There are 3 different kinds of badges. Principal officer, so anybody that is owning that business, you're going to have a principal officer badge. Agent in charge would be, like I said, your managers, your supervisors, and then agent, everybody else. You cannot work in the dispensary without your badge physically on your person, okay? You need to have it hang. I don't know if Joe's still there. No. You have to have it on your person at all times. It needs to be visible, okay? It can't be in your pocket. You can't stick it in your purse. Well, I have it here. It has to be dangling on a lanyard or on a little hip thing. You have to have it, okay? Inspectors will look for that. I actually had that happen to me. I met one of the inspectors, somebody that I communicated a lot with on email and never met in person. I said, "Oh, hi, I'm Liz. It's great to meet you in person." And she was like, "Yeah," and grabbed the badge right off my thing and started looking to make sure that it was valid as of that day.
Those are issued by the state?
Yes.
So if your employee loses one, what happens?
They don't get to work. You forgot it at home, you need to turn around and you need to go back and get it. So if somebody who's taking a bus or a train, that's not good. So my recommendation would be that these badges never leave the facility, okay? Because the other issue is that when your employee stops working for you, you have to send that badge back to the state. So if you have a real riled up employee and they take off and they have their badge, then you have to tell the state that you can't get that badge back. So that's a tough one. Not quite. The biggest thing about badges is that the turnaround time is generally 2 to 6 weeks, typically about 4 weeks. So if you hire an employee today, they don't get to start for a month, okay? And that's really, really difficult to plan. So you have to hire so much more in advance than you would normally. And also that person's going to be sitting on their hands for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I've had it goes over 8 sometimes. And it's really tough. So planning your staff training to kind of happen while they're just sitting around is a really good option for you.
So you're paying them for that full time before they get the badge?
No, you pay them when they work for you. If you're doing trainings with them, then yes, you would pay them. But it's just they're sitting around, they're not going to be able to do anything. So, if they have a job, they don't need to quit right away. It's really difficult to balance, but it's something to be aware of because you need to make sure that this is in your business model. Yes?
Could you speak to what the average, rates or compensation packages you were looking at for the agent in charge or the agent, so we can have an idea of budgeting?
That's pretty different. For a regular agent, speaking on like what we would call a patient counselor or a bud tender, anywhere between 12 and 17 seems to be about right hourly. If you have an agent in charge, this is going to be somebody who's probably managing your facility, so your manager may be making $50,000 to $60,000 a year. But again, this is something that you kind of set up on your own financials. Yeah.
And I'll talk a little bit more about that in my presentation.
Perfect. And then when you get your badge, you have to get fingerprinted. I know somebody mentioned it. When you get fingerprinted, they're going to be doing an FBI background check and a state background check. You have to complete an attestation form. This is where I was kind of saying before, you have to say, have you ever been arrested? Have you ever been convicted? That's there. They're going to ask you, are you late on student loans? Do you have outstanding child support payments? Those sort of things are things that are going to help you get a badge denial, which you don't want. So make sure that those things are kind of taken up. You have to prove residency, give them a photo, those sort of things, and it all gets submitted online. And I think...
Do you have to be an Illinois state resident to work in a dispensary?
No. Does anybody have any other questions? We sort of zipped through the end of this one, so we're all good.
Thank you.